Does the word negotiation make you feel a little uneasy? Here's the twist. New research from Columbia Business School shows that women's natural communication style isn't a weakness, it's a strategic advantage. Hey there, leaders. I'm Sabrina Brahm, and this is Women's Leadership Success. Today I'm talking with Scott Walker, a former Scotland Yard kidnapped negotiator who spent 5 years getting hostages safely home. Scott's sharing the exact techniques he used in those life or death moments, now adapted for your toughest workplace conversations. You'll learn how to manage emotional hijacking, build tactical empathy, and turn hard conversations into collaborative success without sacrificing who you are. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Women's Leadership Podcast, showing you how to influence people, improve your performance, and advance your career. Brought to you by women's leadership and career expert Sabrina Brahm and womensleadershipsuccess.com. Here's your chance to meet women trendsetters leading the way to success, accomplishment, and balance in business and life. No matter if you're a manager, CEO, or entrepreneur, join Sabrina for coaching and no-nonsense advice to improve your career and bottom line.
Welcome, Scott.
Hi, how you doing? Great to be here, Sabrina. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm very excited about interviewing you. I'm a great admirer. I love your book. And I wanted to ask you, hey, what is negotiation really?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Straight out. The way I like to explain it is it's a conversation with a purpose. So many people, when you ask them, do you negotiate? How are you negotiating? They run a mile. They think it's some kind of car salesman or some kind of sleazy marketing ploy. But actually, we're negotiating all day, every day, because life is one big negotiation without that sounding too much like a cliche. But when you think about it, if it's a conversation with a purpose and we're looking to influence or persuade or bring about some kind of cooperation or collaboration with other people, and that's the same whether or not you're dealing with kidnappers in a boardroom or with your teenagers who just do not want to do what you want them to do.
I love this, and as a coach and a consultant, I think this is one of the major issues people have is they really don't know how to do this. But before we get into how to do this, I was really interested to see that you'd worked at Scotland Yard. Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, as a background, as a career detective, 16 years at Scotland Yard, dealing with all kinds of investigations, organised crime, counter-terrorism. And then in the last 5 years, I got introduced to the whole world of kidnap negotiation. At the time, the only danger and excitement I had was paper cuts on all of the crime reports I had to supervise. And I bumped into a colleague of mine in the canteen in South London, and he just come back from 3 days negotiating the release of this kid from the hands of a drugs gang. And I was like, I want some of that. And so he put me in touch, and I did the selection process and training, and spent pretty much 5 years there, getting the phone call at 2:00 in the morning, racing across London to sit with the family who were getting the calls from the kidnappers, and then work with them and my colleagues in the background to get the release of the hostages. And then when I left the police, I then went into the private sector and then spent another 10 years or so doing that all over the world, from every industry and sector you can think of.
Wow, that's incredible. The ability to do this is so important. And I have a client right now, he's being accused of something. When he's being accused of something or people aren't listening to him, he gets angry. And as you can imagine, that doesn't work very well. So
it doesn't, but I think we can all empathize and relate to that.
Right.
It's that emotional hijack, the amygdala, that little tiny part in our brain that is hardwired to, pick a fight or run away. And, when our hot buttons are pressed, we get hijacked. And then that's the time when we may say something that we later regret, or we press send on an email or text message and thinking, oh, where's the recall button? But it's too late. And it's usually when that hijack takes place. So he's not alone there. And in fact, on my very first kidnapping case, I nearly had the shortest career as a negotiator because it happened to me. And they're advising the family whose son had been taken hostage, and they're just not listening to me. I'm giving them all this advice. I'm full of enthusiasm and ego and testosterone. I'm the savior. And so I thought. And after a couple of days of this, I just turn around to them and say words to the effect of, what's wrong with you people? Why can't you just do what I'm telling you to do and your son will come back? I mean, how do you think that landed? Not very well. And then I had a hand on my shoulder then by a far more experienced negotiator colleague who just squeezed it ever so gently. And that was enough to interrupt my pattern, to stop that emotional hijack from continuing. And I took a step back and I watched a masterclass in what I now teach. It then took me another 15, 16 years to master it. And now that's when I go into companies and I teach the same principles there, that it doesn't matter if you're trying to persuade a family how to negotiate for the release of their son, when it's a matter of life or death, or you trying to resolve some workplace conflict, or bring in a change program where there's some resistance, or you're just trying to sell a product or service to a client or an ego-driven boss. We're human beings. You know this, Sabrina, in the work that you do, that we are feeling creatures that think, not thinking creatures that feel. And the sooner we can understand that and master what goes on for us and other people, then we're halfway there in terms of being able to influence and persuade them, particularly when they don't want to be influenced and persuaded.
I agree with this, but when somebody says something that pushes my button, how am I going to keep under control? What are some instant things I can do to kind of shift that?
Okay, I learned this the hard way again, because they're the best lessons, right? When life kind of makes you learn them the hard way. Is I call it the immediate action drill. Okay, the IA drill. The military have this where they have this process. It's a 3-step process. And I kind of made this my own, really. Is a bit like in that first case I just gave you, where my colleague Steve, he squeezed my shoulder. You need to interrupt the pattern. So if you're in a spiral, if you're in a negative emotional loop, you really want to say what you really want to say to that person, even though you know it's not going to help. Because after all, Sabrina, you're right and they're wrong, and their argument is worse than yours, and you want to tell them that, and you want to convince them that. In that moment, just interrupt the pattern. Buy yourself time. Even if it's a split second, if you sat down, stand up, take a couple of deep breaths, go outside, take a drink of water, just interrupt it. That's the first step. Because then the second step is to ride the wave, I call it, riding the wave. And this is the cortisol and adrenaline wave. You mentioned there about a colleague of yours who gets activated or triggered, like we all do at times. In that moment, you can't do anything about that cortisol wave that is pumping through your body. And so biologically, it lasts for about 90 seconds, 2 minutes. And so if you can ride the wave for those 90 seconds, 2 minutes, without pressing send, without saying what it is you really want to say, then you can allow your body to regulate and ground yourself and bring a bit of equanimity to the situation. It may take a bit longer. It may take you 2 hours to start with. But over time, it's like a muscle. The more you do this, the quicker it becomes. Because if it's lasting more than 90 seconds, I'm sorry to say, you're just pressing repeat inside your head in a lousy story. Easy, right. It's simple but not easy, right? And so first of all, we want to interrupt the pattern. Second one is we want to be able to ride that wave. And then when we're in a better position, we can... another part of that riding the wave is, imagine you're in a riverbank, okay? And you're watching the river go past in front of you, and they're your emotions. And occasionally life nudges you into the river, and what happens is you kind of get yourself out, dry yourself off, and go, "Oh, okay, that's just part of life." But sometimes we go for a swim out to sea, and then we start drowning in the waves of overwhelm. So actually, if we can try and remain on the bank, on the riverbank, and observe, but not absorb. Observe what's going on, feel the feelings, but just drop the story as to why you're feeling it. Okay. And then in that place, when you become far more balanced, you can move to step 3, which is you can ask better questions. Questions you would never have dreamt of asking in the activated fight or flight, amygdala emotionally hijacked state at the beginning. Such as, what's the real issue here? What's missing? And you know this as a coach, these great what and how questions really require you or the other person to go a little deeper, to do that heavy lifting. So you want to interrupt the pattern. Step 1. Step 2, ride the wave and observe but not absorb from the riverbank. And third step, ask better questions.
I love that. One of the things I do is usually go into the restroom and wash my hands. That helps me a bunch. The other one that I do now that I couldn't have done years ago, and that is the minute it starts to happen like that, I imagine I'm watching a movie, and it's not me it's happening to, it's somebody else. And that gives me a little distance so that now it's not, oh my God, they're personally attacking me. It's like I'm just watching this thing happening.
That's good. And then another little technique here as well that can then help is, again, I used to use this on every single call with kidnappers and in other kind of crisis situations and in business as well. Before I go and give a keynote talk, for example, is I will feel the weight of my feet, feel the soles of my feet on the floor. Just bring my
that's
attention.
a good one.
And
that's great.
You're doing this. You could be sat there. You could be in a meeting. You're about to give your pitch. You're about to dismiss somebody, sack somebody, or you're about to have a really difficult conversation, whatever it is. Just bring your attention to the soles of your feet. And it's amazing how present that can make you and how grounded. And as you said, it just take a slight step back, observe but don't absorb. And from like your example there, where you can almost take a helicopter view or a balcony view, and from there you can, the whole vision in front of you, the whole area, the topic you're dealing with just suddenly expands and you get more options.
Beautiful. You teach that naming emotions helps to tame them. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, this is it's been around for decades. I think it started maybe in the psychotherapy world back in the 50s or something. But really, it's this thing of, because we're feeling creatures that think, we're driven by emotion. As you know, we make decisions emotionally, and then we look to rationalize them afterwards. And so if we can call out, if we can identify and then name the emotions that are in us and what are in the other person we're dealing with, it kind of diffuses it. See, maybe we're having a conversation, we have a difficult conversation or a sales call. I could be, Sabrina, do you know what? You sound frustrated. It seems like you're thinking that maybe this is overpriced and you're not really getting value from here. And and you make it, well, actually, no, I'm not really frustrated. I'm just a bit disappointed. And, I feel a bit let down by you, Scott. And so by bringing these emotions out into the center, onto the table in front of us, it just allows us to deal with it. It kind of reduces the power or the negative energy. It kind of enhances the positive emotions and it diffuses the negative. And it doesn't matter if we don't quite get it right either, because the other person can correct us, but by making the effort, it helps. And people think sometimes, well, Scott, if I name this, if I bring this into the open, is it going to put ideas into the person's head that weren't already there? And I'm like, they're there anyway, even if it's subconsciously. So you dragging that big elephant of emotion into the center of the room, you're not bringing in anything that isn't already there. And if we can do that, Another great benefit and outcome of this technique is actually prevents this 11th hour sabotage of a deal. The deal where you think we're over the line, we've got this sorted. The most dangerous time is just when you think you're winning, because we haven't dealt with the underlying emotions.
Mm-hmm. And it also allows the person you're negotiating with to realize what they're putting out. Like, they might be angry, but they might not realize they're angry or having this other emotion. And once they do that, doesn't that diffuse it a little bit sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can name it for decisions or actions as well. And I think, people are so frightened these days of, let's call it conflict or challenge.
Yeah.
We think we have this misconception, and the self-help industry and the positive psychology in the business space hasn't really helped here, I don't think. It's where everybody's meant to feel warm and fuzzy all the time. No, but no, that's no, that doesn't work.
It's not life.
I've never met any successful leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners who feel that, and actually the ones who are successful, regardless of which industry or sector, geography or wherever it is, are the ones who can turn and face the uncomfortable emotions, embrace the conflict. It doesn't mean you have to be a pain in the backside. It doesn't mean you have to be rude or belligerent. You just have to face the difficult conversations head on. And the first part of that is understanding the emotions in yourself and the other people.
Mm-hmm. That really makes a lot of sense. I have a client who is on the front lines of negotiating contracts with suppliers, and she's an introvert. And she wanted me to ask you, how does she develop trust and credibility when she's shy? How does she do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think trust is one of those ones where it's a two-sided coin. Okay, you have to be trusting in order to be trusted. And trust is it's the golden thread to all negotiation. I had to trust the kidnappers that if I was going to hand over some ransom money, that they were going to release the hostages unharmed, and everybody was going to be able to walk away from this. And equally, they had to trust me that I wasn't going to look to rip them off, ambush them, kill them, arrest them, or whatever it is. And so if it works in life or death scenarios where there's a 93% success rate, it works for the rest of day-to-day life. And actually, trust is simply following through with what you say you're going to do. So if you're going to deliver by a certain date, make sure you do so, or even beforehand. If you're going to say you're going to be available between these times, be available between these times for a call. It's simple things. There's no kind of, people, again, a bit like negotiation, people try and blow it out of all proportion. Trust is, can I trust you that you're going to do your side, that you're going to fulfill your side of the bargain here? Do I feel safe that if I need you to do something, you're going to do it? You're not going to let me down. You're not going to throw me under the bus or kind of, use me as leverage for something else. But going to the specific point about whether or not you're an introvert or an extrovert, actually being an introvert can play to your strengths there, because she can actually use that to her advantage. And often with introverts, they sometimes they like a little more information, more data to base their decisions on. They don't actually like to be the one who are front and center. But actually what they can do is they can get the other person to do maybe more of the talking, but they can ask more questions, for example.
Beautiful. And my next question is actually my favorite one. I love your book. I love all the videos on YouTube that you're in. Sensory acuity. It seems like reading the room or reading people is a major problem in terms of people really knowing how to negotiate a contract, develop rapport, trust. How can people develop that?
Yeah, sensory acuity it's something I've really discovered over the years, that it's imagining you've got a radar dish on the top of your head, and every time you engage with another person or with a situation, you're scanning. You want to be almost doing this subconsciously as to, okay, what is really going on here? And not most of us are quite good at this anyway. We can walk into a room and go, something's not quite right in here, even though nothing is being said or done to demonstrate or to make you feel like that. You just get a sense because things aren't quite as you think they should be. And so it's just being able to tune into what is going on for you and for other people. And unfortunately, people, they want to hack, what's the quickest way to do the X, Y, and Z, Scott? Actually, again, this is a bit like going to the gym. If you want to get fit and strong, it's like a muscle, as I mentioned earlier. So developing this sensory acuity muscle is just practicing it. Next time you have a conversation with somebody, or you walk into a room, it could be a networking event, it could be a client meeting. Feel your feet on the floor, soles of your feet on the floor, take a couple of deep breaths, almost take a bit of a helicopter view or balcony view, take a step back, buy yourself a second, and just tune into what's going on in the room. And a way people can practice that is several times throughout the day. Set their alarm and maybe just tune in for 30 seconds or so.
Bless you.
What people can do is then just tune in for maybe 30 seconds or so as to what is going on in their body. You could be busy writing an email or a report, and actually just stop. Just take a couple of breaths, sit still, don't have to look anything, just sit there 10, 20, 30 seconds and just notice what's showing up for you and maybe around you. And again, it just develops that sensory acuity as to what's going on.
I think that really works well. Another thing is turning on a movie on your television and put the sound off and follow the action, then turn it back on and see if you've got the emotion right. Are they angry? Yeah. Are they jealous?
That's really good. I've not used that one, but I think that's a really good one. And you know what? Most people would get it right, because we just need to bring some intentionality to all of this. We are hardwired to negotiate, to influence, persuade. We need to do it as a species for millions of years. Reciprocity, social proof, being able to follow through, commitment with what we say we're going to do. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't survive in the tribes that we live in.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think you can really amp it up with what self-awareness, like you're talking about. And also, just you can practice on people where it's not the event, like the negotiation of, it looks like you're feeling sad right now, Scott, like a question. And if they say, no, I'm not sad, I'm actually contemplating something, or a little kid, are you feeling really happy right now? They'll tell you, yes, I am, or no, I'm not, but you can practice asking people so that you get it down better and better as you go along.
Yeah, and life gives you plenty of opportunity to practice this, Sabrina, right?
Exactly.
You don't need to go too far. Practice on the low stuff, the low risk things. And actually, as you said, when the big stuff comes along, you're ready to go.
Well, this has been great. Is there anything? We're just about done with this segment of the show, and I wanted to ask you. First off, two things. I'm going to ask you in a minute to give us another tip we can take away with us. But how do people get a hold of you? And I happen to notice that you have a great offer going right now about your book. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to share that with the people on the show.
Yeah, sure. The success of the first book it's taken everybody by surprise, and I'm really, really pleased for that. And I'd like to be able to send people, a free signed copy of that book, just people just cover the shipping. And what I've done in the package is included a load of bonuses as well. Workbooks and cheat sheets that people can use or put on their desk every single day when they're working or having these conversations as well. And so people want to go to orderoutofchaosbook.com. They'll be able to access that there. So orderoutofchaosbook.com, and all the details are there. And join the newsletter and everything else where I share more insights and tools and techniques they can work in every day.
Yeah, it looks like a great offer. I highly recommend people do that. So Scott, is there anything else that you could share as a takeaway that people could start doing today?
There's a couple of things, really. The first one is always seek out worthy opponents. These are people we might label as difficult. The ones that we try and avoid, but actually they'll give you all the best practice you can have in terms of influencing and persuading other people. So yeah, always seek out worthy opponents. And maybe the other thing is, whenever you're preparing to have one of these conversations, I'll call it the bunch of fives. Okay, and we used to do this on every single call, before every call with the hostage takers, and that is, what are the top 5 obstacles, challenges, threats, demands, obstacles, issues, whatever it is for you, that are likely to show up and get in your way of you closing the deal, someone saying yes, resolving the issue, whatever it is for you. If you can play devil's advocate and understand what those top 5 likely things are, it means you're forearmed, which is forewarned, which means you're more prepared. So when it does happen, rather than getting knocked off course and emotionally hijacked, you can go, yes, I knew this was going to happen and I'm prepared for it. It doesn't knock you off course, and you can carry on achieving what is the outcome that you were looking for.
That's incredible. And also, since you started off as a negotiator who didn't know what you were doing, you probably practice this one a lot, and that is, when you mess up, when it doesn't go right, you can rewind, you can think about what didn't work so that you could practice that for the next time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always do a little debrief with yourself on those.
Okay. In part 2, we're going to go deeper into the art of influence. We'll explore what to do when logic fails, how to diffuse conflict when emotions flare, and how to win without damaging relationships. You'll hear the habits that turn negotiation into leadership and communication into impact. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Thanks again, Scott.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you found value today, please subscribe and leave a review to help other leaders discover these insights. For weekly advancement strategies, subscribe to the Missing Link Leadership Link, my 5-minute newsletter delivering tactics top executives use to increase visibility and command respect in meetings. Find it at sabrinabrom.com/missing leadership link. Would you like to advance your career faster? Coaching with me will help. Contact me at sabrina@sabrinabrom.com about coaching or joining my exclusive Impact Executive Leadership Mastermind. Follow me on LinkedIn for daily leadership tips. Just search Sabrina Brom Executive Leadership Coach. Until next time, keep elevating your presence and advancing your career.
Thank you for joining your host, Sabrina Brom, on another Women's Leadership Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can email her at sabrina@sabrinabrom.com. Since 1989, Sabrina and her team have helped hundreds of women managers, business leaders, and entrepreneurs with valuable trainings, articles, books, and executive coaching. For additional tips, interviews, and free access to Great Leaders Today mini course, visit www.womensleadershipsuccess.com.